Okay, so today we want to review our essays that we wrote last week, the district writing assessment. This video is for those of you who scored or received a score of a 4 or a 3, and we're going to review why. So here's the RUSD expository rubric. So this is basically the things that we looked at when determining your score for your essay. So here you see we have an adequate score of a 4. That means that you're an adequate writer. You're not bad, but you're not great. That would be equivalent to a C, a grade of a C. And then we have marginal, where you're like, not so good. And as we see here, not college ready. So this is equivalent to a 3 would be equivalent to a D for your grade. So look at the things that we look at when we're grading a paper. So response to topic, understanding and use of assigned reading, quality and clarity of thought, organization, development, and support of your paper. Then we have syntax and command of language, grammar, usage, and mechanics. So we'll review what those are. So if you received a 4, that's basically saying that your paper's on topic, but it's missing some parts of the task. So maybe you didn't address all parts of the writing prompt, which a lot of you didn't do. A 3 shifted, changed, or left out portions of the task. We've seen a lot of this happening too. So you may have started on task with your thesis statement, but as you got into body paragraphs 2 and 3, you totally went off topic. Understanding use of assigned reading. So logical response reveals an understanding of the assigned text. So if you got a 4, we could see that you understood what you're supposed to do, but you may have struggled to demonstrate that understanding. If you had a 3, it was a limited response. It reveals an understanding of the text, but some parts are confused. So maybe you had an idea of what you're supposed to be talking about, but you kind of rambled on, which caused it to be confusing. Quality and clarity of thought. So you examine the topic simply with little depth or original thinking. So basically, you talked about it. You may have given a little bit of insight, but that's about it. 3 is not focused on the topic, and it shows some confusion. So we've seen a lot of those too. The organization development. So a piece is organized and contains reason, evidence, examples, and support. So again, remember we talked about writing in the order that you present your points in a thesis statement. So remember the activity we did on the board a few weeks ago where you put the essay in order. Because of the way that, in the order that things were presented in the thesis statement. So that's what we're talking about here. If you had a 3, piece is poorly organized and doesn't contain reasons, evidence, examples, and support that makes any sense. So we've seen a lot of this going on here. So syntax and command of language. So again, how you're using your, forming your sentences, subject, verb agreement, that type of thing. So sentences are able to be understood but are rarely varied, so it's kind of just very basic writing skills. If you had a 3, sentences are somewhat confusing, which makes the piece somewhat difficult to read and understand. So this happened a lot. I would read things in essays where it kind of felt like you're talking in circles, or you left out some basic grammar and it wasn't making sense. Grammar, usage, and mechanics. So some errors in grammar, spelling, and mechanics of writing. So you maybe misspelled a word or had bad punctuation. This is several. So this is kind of like an ongoing issue going throughout the paper, which most of you are falling under this category. So you'll see in some of your rubrics, you'll see maybe you may have gotten 3s all the way down, but when it got to syntax and grammar, you may have scored a 4, but still averaged out to a 3. Let's move on to the next part. So let's review what was being asked of you for this essay. So we have enduring understanding and essential question background. So this was the information that was on the district writing assessment handout, the one we were looking over for the past few weeks. So during this quarter, we have read several selections focused on the enduring understanding, our individual identity and character to determine how we contribute to society. We have also worked to construct answers to various essential questions. So the essential questions that we had discussed throughout the unit of To Kill a Mockingbird, but more so our focus was the individual identity and character determining how someone contributes to their society. So Atticus, or the 8th grade boy, for example. Here's the actual writing prompt. So using 2 selections you have studied, write an argumentative essay where you support how our individual identity and character determine how we contribute to society. So again, individual identity, individual character, how it determines someone contributes to society. So going back to using 2 selections, most of you are great on that one, using the excerpt from the writing prompt and the novel. But a lot of you, some of you just got one tract and you just talked nothing about To Kill a Mockingbird. Or you guys got really focused on the 8th grade boy from the basketball story, and that's all you wrote about. And if you did those types of things, that's what got you a 3 versus a 4. Additional directions. So we have provided an excerpt below that you may also include to support your claim. In addition to using textual evidence, your essay should contain a clear thesis statement and multiple paragraphs that pair your evidence with thoughtful analysis. You may also bring in examples from your own experience, observations, and readings. So going back here, in addition to using textual evidence, this is where almost all of you failed. Textual evidence, we talked about that. So citing or quoting from the book or the novel on a character, or even pulling something directly from the excerpt about the 8th grade boy, you could have used to support your argument. But most of you who received a 3 or a 4 failed to put textual evidence in, and it was basically statements like I feel, or in my opinion, or I don't think. So basically the essay ended up being just an opinion piece, not anything that you had evidence to support your findings. So also, you may also bring in examples from your own experience, observations, and readings. You could have done this too to kind of fill in those gaps if you didn't know what else to talk about. And I can't really recall any of you who actually did this. But we can talk more about that later. So remember, we have the overview of the essay. So y'all received this, and it breaks down what goes into each paragraph. So your opening sentences, background, information, and your thesis statement. Your body paragraph should have had a topic sentence, evidence of proof, and an interpretation of your evidence or proof, or your thoughts on what was going on here. Then it ended with your conclusion, which would be revisiting your thesis, a summary of the paragraphs discussed, and if you can't see that here, that says final statement. So let's review some essays. So here is a 4. This one looks like it's a little hard to read. Let's go back. So this one received a 4 because she starts off strong, or okay. How do you help out in your community? Do you stand up for others when they can't stand up for themselves? Are you selfish, or the one that care about yourself and don't care or what happens to others? Your character tells a lot about you. It tells if you are giving back to society or not doing anything at all. So she has an okay thesis statement, but she only addressed 2 parts of the prompt. And the prompt was, you had to discuss character and identity and how they allow someone to contribute to society. So she left out 1 part. So it's a 3-point thesis, and she left out a part. And here, so she talks about To Kill a Mockingbird here. So she kind of talks about his identity and his character. And then here she jumps down to the text that was given. The text that was given talks about how a dad was in a situation. So it's very vague information. What's the text that was given? Again, we need to talk to our reader like they don't know what you're talking about. So the better part here, she did good in To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus. So we know we're talking about Atticus from a novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. But here, we don't know. Who is she talking about? Where is this boy coming from? What is the situation? What does that have to do with this essay? So I can see that she has an idea of what's going on. She leaves out some elements of the thesis. She does have a general idea of organization here. But she doesn't quite get there. And that's why she receives a 4. Let's go on to the next one. So here's another 4. So have you ever wondered how your attitude and character contributes to your society? It's a good starter. Do you give back to your society by helping your ideal community, by your local community, or are you the type of person who keeps to themselves and doesn't have a second thought of what's going on around them? In this case, an individual with a strong identity, strong character, who contributes to society in a positive way, as opposed to someone with a weak identity and weak character who barely gives back. So she's hitting on all 3 points of the thesis statement, but when you get to these last 2 to 3 sentences here, the grammar kind of throws you off a little bit. So it's kind of hard to have a clear thought of what's going on. Here she talks about Atticus, but she doesn't say where he's from. So again, we all know Atticus because we've been reading the book, but we can assume that our reader of our essay has. So we don't know who Atticus really is. So she kind of hits on some parts. She does have some textual evidence here, even though it's not cited correctly, but it is there. So this is kind of how she remains throughout the rest of her essay. She just kind of lacks that focus. And again, on the second page, which you can't see, she says, and then the 8th grade boy. And again, she doesn't tell the reader where the 8th grade boy came from. She just says 8th grade boy. So who is that? Is that her cousin? Is it a boy from a TV show? Is it from an article? Where is he? And then 4. This is the last 4. So Atticus Finch better contributes because his character is reflected onto his identity, so he can better contribute, whereas the 8th grade boy can't contribute to society because he hasn't developed enough for his character and identity to be fully built. That's a lot to be saying for a thesis statement. He's almost already arguing his thesis statement here, when he could have been, or he or she could have been more general, sticking to the 3 points of the thesis statement, and then argue these points about Atticus here, and this point about the 8th grade boy and his other paragraph. So, that's kind of what receives a 4. It's briefly, characters are briefly introduced up here, but it says 8th grade boy from an article given. Well, when you do that, you need to make sure you introduce that source. So the thesis is a little unclear. Organization is, it's okay. It's not the greatest. So that's what gets you a 4. And we will talk about more about organization in the future. So let's go to a 3. Most people contribute to society in a positive manner or in a way that their individual identity influences this. Doesn't make sense. But how does our individual identity and character determine how we contribute to society? So right off the bat, a clear thesis, but there's not an opening sentence, there's not thorough background information, so it's kind of So I know you could kind of split up. We talked about talking about Atticus here, and then talking about the 8th grade boy here, but this student broke down identity and character into 2 paragraphs, and then he compared and contrasted Atticus and the 8th grade boy in both. And here he just says 8th grade boy from the passage. So who is that? What is that? And he kind of gets a little long-winded, kind of a little off track here and there. But you have to remember, there's 3 parts to this thesis: identity, character, and contributing to society. So he has 2 paragraphs talking about individual identity and character. So he kind of gets off track. So that's the reason for a 3. Thesis here. The 8th grade boy will not necessarily can give back to his community. Therefore, Atticus and the 8th grade boy will in a way give back to the society. So poor thesis, very confusing. It's hard to make sense of what's going on. So we'll stop right here and we'll pick up in the second video.